and opinions expressed by callers, guests, and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of the Black Talk Radio Network and Black Talk Media Project. Black Talk Radio is new black media for the new millennium.
Peace. How's everybody doing out there today? I trust everybody had a productive day and is settling down for a productive evening. I wish everyone bliss, as well as continued peace. We are going to have a dynamic show for you today here on Melanated Roots. The topic for today is going to be genocide, destruction of melanated people through toxins and medical science. I am your co-host, Brother Rio, sitting right next to my other co-host, Brother Tommy. Brother Tommy, how are you feeling today? Brother Tommy, are you there, brother?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, brother. Welcome.
Oh, okay.
How you feeling today, brother?
Oh, man, I'm feeling real good. Looking forward to the show. Looking forward to bringing some positive information to the people. Brother had a positive day, positive vibes. I think we got some good information to give. And hopefully we can have a really good discussion. People who are listening will feel free to call in and give the information that they have and give their opinions, because this is a topic that is wide and expansive, and a lot of people are paying attention to it. So we're going to do our best to bring forth some information and things that we can build upon.
I agree. We're going to do our best to give the people exactly the information they need to do their due diligence. Today is July 31st, 2017. We are having a live show today, and if you want to reach out and express your comments, you can reach us at 866-510-9025. Hit **, and we'll get you on air so that you can participate in the show. We'd also like to further put out a disclaimer before we go forward that any information that you get is not the express views of the radio station. And also, we are not doctors. This is not medical advice. It is to be taken for informative purposes, and you should do your due diligence before consuming or taking anything for healing purposes or for the sake of a cure. Anything to add to that, Brother Tommy?
No, absolutely. I agree. This is a show to pretty much just to wake people up, or not even wake people up. I think a lot of people are aware of the type of environment that we are living in, that it is toxic. I think people are aware, especially black folks, that they have a healthy fear towards the medical industry. So I just think we just need to look at this from all sides, just inform ourselves so that we can put ourselves, each one of us, in the best position possible to be healthy and to be able to create an environment that's healthy for our children and the people to come. So I just think it's a topic that we definitely need to deal with from all angles.
I agree, brother. And one thing I do want to kind of, explain why most people put a disclaimer before they start talking about, many different things such as law, or in our case, medicine or toxins and medical services of that nature is the term medical is a term that pretty much is exclusive to one particular industry globally, but any reference to that particular industry, be it medical or medicinal or any derivative of that word, implies some type of professionalism or licensure within that profession. And if you are not licensed within that profession, they will come after you if it is construed that you are giving advice on anything considered medical. So again, we have to protect ourselves and say that we are not doctors and we are not giving any kind of medical advice.
Absolutely. And basically just dealing with what we all know that is going on, the environment in which we all are existing in. We are seeing the toxicity of the environment on an everyday basis. We're seeing it on many different levels. We are seeing how toxins are, and waste is definitely being pushed towards black people. And let me be specific here, Brother Rio. I want our audience to know that we know that when it comes to toxins, medical garbage, the atmosphere, we know that everybody is being affected, black, brown, white, of all races. But we want to be specific on how our people are being affected. And even though everybody is being affected as a whole, they are specifically targeting black communities. And when it comes to the results of these communities being targeted by the medical community, different industries that are polluting, we are the ones that are suffering the worst from these issues. When it comes to all the medical issues, black folks are dealing with it in higher numbers and higher concentrations than other people. So we definitely have to speak to, we know that the environment is bad for everybody, but these guys, these cats, this system is specifically targeting black folks, and we need to talk about it and discuss it.
I agree with you, brother. And I would like to add that toxins are prevalent throughout the environment, as you were saying. Some of that is targeted, and some of that is, just an occurrence. It's just a byproduct of their greed and their economic lust for money and power. But make no mistake about it, that they are targeting the melanated people on a global level for different purposes, which we will go into later in the show. But they are targeting us. And I just want to make sure that, that is the angle that we're coming from, even though we understand that there's going to be some collateral damage. People that they don't truly care about anyway, whether they want to call them white trash or middle class or interlopers or what have you. The people pulling the chains, they care about themselves and the people closest to them. Everybody else is pretty much fodder. But, at the bottom of the barrel, from their perspective, are the people of the melanated populations. So, plans have been put in place to control that population, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we say genocide, we do mean genocide because it is planned and it is being executed.
Absolutely. It's being executed at the highest level as well, because you're looking at the original group of people who are indigenous all over the world to all land masses. And you look at the way these Europeans have gone continent to continent and basically have done everything they can to decimate the indigenous populations in these lands. And now we are moving to a point to where they want to continue to decimate this population, but do it in ways that they believe are covert. But, we are the most intelligent people on this planet, so that there's a portion of us who are going to pick up on the things that they're doing immediately because we already know what their history is. So if you're looking at this indigenous people being on a landmass of Africa, which is the most rich soil on the planet, and they want to control it because of the minerals and the wealth that comes out of the ground, and they know that there's a diaspora that's spread out from those people. So anything they can do to minimize the indigenous people and take control of land masses with natural resources, that's exactly what they're going to do. And they're on the move, and we now are at a point to where we have to catch them, and we have to be able to identify what they're doing and have a counter plan to what it is that we identify.
So true, brother, so true. And as I understand it, we have, a clip that where a doctor himself is telling of the atrocities that are being committed within the medical community and how they are pretty much just wreaking havoc with the intent of study, research, and general mayhem. Can you elaborate on that clip just a little bit?
Yeah, well, what it is, it's this particular doctor is just one of them who's basically blowing the whistle on how these doctors are prescribing medicines that people don't need, how these doctors are diagnosing conditions that people don't have. In addition to this video we're about to play, there's another doctor out there that I'm familiar with called Nancy Turner Banks. Are you familiar with her, Brother Rio?
Nancy Turner? No, I'm not, brother.
Okay. She wrote a book called AIDS, Opium, Diamond, something like that, AIDS, Opium, and Diamonds. What she basically is saying, she's a Harvard-trained doctor. What she's basically saying is that doctors are misdiagnosing black people and telling them they have diseases and viruses and things that they don't have, and then getting them hooked on drugs. And the drug itself is starting to cause the afflictions that we see, AIDS and autoimmune diseases and things of that nature. She's showing that the problem is coming in from allowing these people to diagnose us in the first place. So this gentleman is kind of speaking to the same thing. We have to quit allowing these doctors in this pharmaceutical industry that are controlling the doctors to quit. We have to stop running to them and allowing them to diagnose us with problems that we don't have. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of what we're going to talk about on the medical side. And this is kind of what the doctor is speaking to also once we hear the clip. The problem is they're diagnosing you with things you don't have, and they're giving you medicine that is going to kill you. Make no mistake about it.
Well, all right, brother, let's go ahead and hear what this doctor...
My name is Peter Gertje. I'm a director of the Nordic Cochrane Center in Copenhagen.
We'll catch up with it and break it down.
Brother Scott, are you ready on that one?
My name is Peter Gertje. I'm a director of the Nordic Cochrane Center in Copenhagen and professor of research design and analysis at the University of Copenhagen. 2 years ago, I found out that our prescription drugs are the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. Our drugs kill around 200,000 people in America every year, and half of these people die while they do what their doctors told them. So they die because of the side effects. The other half die because of errors. And it's often the doctors that make the errors, because any drug may come with 20, 30, or 40 warnings, contraindications, precautions, and so on. No doctor in the world knows about all this. So they give patients drugs that they should not have given them, that interact dangerously with other drugs or food items or so on. and then the patients die. That's the other half. So the other thing I found out 2 years ago was that much of what the drug industry does fulfills the criteria for organized crime in U.S. law. And they behave in many ways like the mafia does. They corrupt everyone they can corrupt. They have bought every type of person, even including ministers of health in some countries. So there is a huge amount of corruption. In my country, for example, Denmark, we are regarded as having very little corruption. But yet we have thousands of doctors on industry payroll, although we are just 20,000 doctors. So this is an effective kind of corruption. The drug industry buys the professors first, then chiefs of department, then other chief physicians and so on. They don't buy junior doctors. So when several thousands are on industry payroll, it's really, really bad. And that's why I wrote my book, Deadly Medicines and Organized Crime, How Big Pharma Has Corrupted Healthcare. I hope to convince patients not to take so many drugs because so many die from the drugs they take. In my country, people take so many drugs that every single citizen can be in treatment with 1.5 drugs from they are born till they die. This is incredible. And drugs are not that helpful. And they kill very many of us. We know that. That's why drugs are the third major killer after heart disease and cancer. So what we need in the coming years is to take far fewer drugs than what we do currently. If we did that and we were careful, then we could live longer and live better lives. Because drugs have many side effects, and patients often don't realize that when they become worse, that it could be a side effect of the drug, which they continue taking because that's what their doctors tell them. So when I was a specialist in internal medicine, what I very often did was that I stopped a lot of drugs, particularly in elderly people, and it's quite revealing to see a bedridden elderly person come into your ward, and when you stop the drugs, I mean, that person becomes many years younger. And many of these drugs affect the brain, and old people tolerate that very, very badly. They fall, and when they break a hip, 1/4 of them die. And for example, antidepressant drugs are used in more than 10% of our elderly. And they seem to kill 3% of them every year. I mean, if 100 old people take an antidepressant for 1 year, 3% of them will die because they fall and break their hip. This is a huge death rate. So a lot of other drugs than antidepressants also make people fall and kill them. And they may affect your cognition, your memory, and all these things. And then they interact in ways that we know almost nothing about. Very many elderly, they take more than 5 drugs a day. And we actually don't know how these drugs interact with each other. What we do know is that all drugs have many effects in the body, and some of them interact also in their metabolism, so that you can get a too high concentration of a drug if you take other drugs simultaneously. So we make a lot of harms that we don't even recognize. I have a pretty colorful collection of things people have called me during all these years. And sometimes journalists have asked me, why do you always look up controversy? And my reply is, I don't. Controversy looks me up. Because it's not popular to tell the truth in healthcare. You will get a lot of enemies. Because a lot of people make money on false premises. Doctors and industry alike. And our drug regulators and our politicians, they are on board on this wagon. So very few people are independent of money in healthcare. And of course, I have attacked a lot of holy cows during my career, and people have screamed loudly. In a French journal, I was called a statistical masturbist because I showed with statistics that mammography screening didn't work and things like that. And I was even accused of scientific misconduct by the Association of the Danish Pharmaceutical Industry, which was completely ludicrous. It was harassment from beginning to end. They came with vague arguments that we cannot recognize the conclusions in your study, and they could have come up with numbers and said, these numbers are wrong. They didn't do anything. It was only harassment. It lasted 18 months, I think, the whole thing. And then when we were acquitted, I made sure that this nasty behavior was described in the British Medical Journal. So after that, they haven't come so much after me, the Danish drug industry. And when my book about organized crime came out, they just lied about it, as they always do, that my examples were old, they went back 90 years and so on. But, you know, where I demonstrate that what the 10 biggest companies do is organized crime, these examples, they were from within the last 10 to 15 years. That's not old examples. And the crimes have increased because when crime pays, you will have more crime. That's how capitalism works.
Wow, that was very powerful. That was very powerful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And let me say one thing, Brother Rio, before we get moving. Like the doctor was just talking about, these doctors prescribing drugs that people don't need, correct? Then it gets down to the point, can you trust the drug itself, period? Whether they just prescribed it to you, oh yeah, I feel you, that's one thing. But the FDA in the process of bringing the drug to you, can you trust it? And let me read this to you, and it's just a little short snippet so that we can even discuss how safe are these drugs that these doctors are recommending to us in the first place. We know that they're misdiagnosing us and giving us drugs we don't need, but what's up with the drug itself? You feel me? So let me read this real fast. Okay. Agents of the Food and Drug Administration know better than anyone else just how bad scientific misbehavior can get. Reading the FDA's inspection files feels almost like watching a highlight reel from a Scientist Gone Wild video. It's a seemingly endless stream of lurid vignettes, each of which catches a medical researcher in an unguarded moment, succumbing to the temptation to do things he knows he really shouldn't be doing. Faked X-ray reports, forged retinal scans, phony lab tests, secretly amputated limbs, all done in the name of science when researchers thought nobody was watching. That misconduct happens isn't shocking. What is shocking is when the FDA finds scientific fraud or misconduct, the agency doesn't notify the public, the medical establishment, or even the scientific community that the results of a medical experiment are not to be trusted. On the contrary, for more than a decade, the FDA has shown a pattern of burying the details of misconduct. As a result, nobody ever find out which data is bogus, which experiments are tainted, and which drugs might be on the market under false pretenses. The FDA has repeatedly hidden evidence of scientific fraud, not just from the public, but also from its most trusted scientific advisors, even when they are deciding whether or not a new drug should be allowed on the market. Even a congressional panel investigating a case of fraud regarding a dangerous drug couldn't get forthright answers. For an agency devoted to protecting the public from bogus medical science, the FDA seems to be spending an awful lot of effort protecting the perpetrators of bogus science from the public. Tell me how you're feeling on that one, brother.
Wow. That says a whole lot in a concise state. But I know it to be true. Yeah. Go ahead, brother.
No, go ahead. What I was going to say was that, I mean, you're looking at it from two sides. You got them diagnosing stuff you don't need, but even worse than that, the drug that they are bringing to you, that they are saying does this and does that, based up off their studies and their things that they do to make sure that a drug is safe, that these things are lies. So basically, you are at a point to where you cannot even trust the drug that the doctor recommends to you, because you are looking at the process by the people who are so-called put in place to protect the public and to make sure that the drug does what it says it does and that the clinical studies and trials are exactly what they said they were. Brother Rio, that's even a lie.
And that's what I wanted to address, brother, because what you're saying is absolutely on point and correct, because, you know, if you do a little digging, it's clear to see that the people who are creating the drugs are also doing the clinical trials, just under a different name or assumed corporations or XYZ. But if you dig, you find that it's the same people. So you have the people who are creating the drug, and they are also approving the studies that were done by them of the drug's effectiveness to either treat or do no harm. In addition to that, to take a company like Monsanto, you have a lot of their CEOs and higher ups quitting the company, getting hired on or voted in or whatever process you want to subscribe to. They become part of the FDA, which is an organization which is supposed to look out for the people and protect the people from bogus studies and harmful drugs. You have the people who are making the drugs have a vested interest in the company, be it stocks or loyalty or what have you, joining the FDA, which is the organization that's supposed to be the watchdog, and letting all their boys just pass this stuff on through to the American public and go as far as to create legislation that they cannot be held responsible, even if at a later date the drug has been found to cause death or other kinds of ailments or harm. You tell me, what's wrong with that picture?
Well, it's a horrible picture, and really what it seems to me, Brother Rio, is puts our people in a position to where you basically can't trust anybody on any sides. We already know we have no friends, but you are at a point now where what are you going to do if you do run into a health crisis, especially if you're someone who isn't conscious of trying to heal yourself, someone who isn't conscious of what they put into their body. If you're not conscious of those things and you're going into this industry blind and looking for a solution to a problem, there's a chance that you may go in the hospital and never come out.
And that is
that's
very
pretty
true.
That's pretty much the way they're setting it up.
They go into the hospital, do not come out.
Yes, sir.
But to stay in that vein, brother, before we even delve into the targeting of our communities, because we know that we are definitely targeted, let's stick with just the general understanding that they're pushing poison and how we kind of got into this position. Why did we move away from self-determination and being able to cure ourselves through herbs and other remedies or what have you? Because it was all planned. Because at one point, you know, what they term homeopathy, which we may call being healed by the herbs, or, you know, the tribal witch doctors, or, you know, the wet nurses, the people who deliver the babies. You know, we had a different culture of medicine to where we interacted with the earth, and we could diagnose and we could heal each other from the earth and energy and, you know, just the general understanding of the human body. But in a nutshell, why conventional medicine hates homeopathy is the name of this article. If it's of any comfort to U.S. homeopaths, until the past 10 years or so, when the health insurance industry gave conventional medicine something serious to fret about, the organized hostility toward alternative medicine was mostly democratic. It hated all forms. Their battle cry, "We're the real doctors, down with the quacks," was directed at any healer who didn't follow 3 rules. Go to our schools, get the licenses that we control, and don't make waves. A good example of this conventional hostility can be gleaned from the Wikipedia entry on homeopathy, which was obviously written by an anti-homeopath. The writing style makes you suspect that he's using particular buzzwords that include pseudoscience or placebo effects and lacks biological plausibility, which I believe the doctor touched on in the clip that we played earlier. Also, to his contempt, he has a habit of placing particular vocabulary of alternative therapies in quotations when they explain themselves, like Ayurvedic, quote-unquote, chakras, as in the disapproval. At one time or another, conventional medicine was vilified, each and every form of alternative medicine, as pseudoscience. But given that scientifically developed and correctly taken prescription drugs are currently, at the time this article was written, the 4th leading cause of death in the U.S., you yourself might be a little safer using one of those pseudoscientific treatments. Homeopathy has been a thorn in the side of conventional medicine since the early 19th century, and it should come as no surprise that the basis for this hostility was originally, of course, economics. In those days, conventional medicine was even more brutal than it is now. Medicines were more toxic, using substances such as mercury and arsenic to treat symptoms of syphilis. Bloodletting was also common, and amputation was the surgeon's procedure of choice. To no one's surprise, patients preferred the gentle remedies of homeopathy. When during a middle century cholera epidemic, patients treated by homeopathy fared better than those managed by the medical establishment. Finally, the bullies win. By manipulating the government into licensing graduates of non-homeopathic schools only, the medical establishment ensured the 20th century dawned with virtually all homeopathic medical colleges closing their doors. By mid-century, MD homeopath has simply died of old age with no one to replace them. In conventional medical schools, generation after generation of medical students listened to the same blather about homeopathy and chiropractic. Until finally in 1965, the Supreme Court told the AMA just to keep its mouth shut about chiropractic and homeopathy altogether. What do you think about that, Brother Tommy? It shows to me that the industry of what we now call the medical profession kind of bullied and positioned themselves to erase as well as vilify the homeopathic services that people were subscribing to because, number one, they're cheaper. You don't have to rely on the doctor. You don't have to get diagnosed. You don't have to pay for treatment, and you don't have to go for follow-ups and things of that nature. And number two, you're not subject to these people. You have your own independence. You can grow your own medicine. You can tailor-make it to fit your situation because not everybody is going to be the same. So, it was a loss of control, and these people wanted control as well as money. So I see them driving all of these homeopaths underground and destroying their good names as well as their practices. And now, through propaganda, we are subject to these medical frauds and the poisons that they're pushing on us because we've forgotten our heritage in the ways that we used to heal each other. You have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely, brother. If you just look at the recent passing of Dr. Sebi and the conditions under which he passed, how mysterious that was, and also there were other homeopathic doctors that were attacked as well. So they definitely can see that there is a consciousness or a group of people that are raising in their consciousness in terms of understanding their health, in terms of what they're putting in their bodies, how we can't trust the medical industry and going into these hospitals and dealing with these European doctors trained in these European concepts of health. They fully understand that people are starting to recognize and wake up to a certain extent. So there is definitely an attack on homeopathic or homeopathy, I don't know which word you use, homeopathic doctors, because they want to cut the tide of people looking to take control of their own health. And like I said, the mysterious death of Dr. Sebi would really speak to, this pushing of homeopathic energy totally out of it. So I think it speaks to it very clearly. And not only that, they also know on the flip side is, you have this conscious people who will look to take control over their self, but you also have this group of people out here that don't want to hear anything about homeopathy because of the way that Western medical science portrays it. Let me give you an example. I have a homeboy, which I told you about this situation. He's suffering from a form of cancer, and it's really taken a heavy toll on him. And they got him on 13, 14 different drugs, medicines that he's taking on a daily basis. He's losing his memory. He's breaking down even more. And when I mentioned to him Dr. Sebi and homeopathy and some other things that maybe he should consider so that he can take his health in his own hands and not allow the system basically to kill him with the medicine, he looked at me like I was absolutely crazy. Like even though he is literally suffering from his condition and suffering from the medicine that he is putting in his system, he was not even willing to even think about something that literally could save his life. So I feel you, man. They're basically doing a work and on homeopathy and doing everything they can to show it in a negative light.
And it's understandable, brother, because their propaganda game is strong. It's very strong. And I'm glad you brought up cancer, because in the field of cancer, which, they make a ton of money in, they have a vested interest in protecting that one area. So I have some examples of how they have verified certain doctors who have, fought to cure cancer and have made strides in curing or easing cancer patients' illnesses. This article, Danger, the War on Cancer Killing. Since President Nixon launched the War on Cancer in 1971, we spent almost $200 billion through taxes, donations, private research, and development to find a cure for cancer, but not much has been accomplished for treating the most common thing. You got a lot of noise in your background.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It seems that the more money spent on the war on cancer, the more cancer occurs. In fact, the annual death toll has risen 73%, over 1.5 times as fast as the growth of the U.S. population. More than 500,000 Americans continue to die from cancer every year. How could this be? There are many reasons. However, I found that it mainly has to do with suppression of natural health alternatives and the enormous amount of money made in the cancer industry. The reality is that research, technologies, clinics, and expensive drugs are making some people a lot of money. Cancer is a very profitable industry. There is vast financial incentive not to have a cure. As Clifton Leaf, executive director of Fortune magazine and cancer survivor himself, pointed out in a 2004 investigative report, the current approach to treating diseases such as cancer is extremely flawed. Some of the problems include our research to R&D supports incremental improvement in medicine rather than genuine breakthroughs. This is partly because most clinical trials are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies who seek FDA approval for new drugs. The focus lies in creating replicable trials that show new drugs are better than old ones. Preventative care, natural approaches, and paradigm-shifting possibilities are not given much opportunity within this structure. The overwhelming majority of cancer research is focused on tumor shrinkage, even though 90% of the time people die from metastasis, the spreading of cancer cells throughout the body, not from localized tumors. Funding for research is usually granted to very narrow studies that are seeking to publish findings rather than find a cure for cancer. For example, less than 0.5% of the grants from the National Cancer Institute dating back to 1972 focus primarily on metastasis, the main killer of people with cancer. And of the 80,900 grants awarded in 2003, 92% didn't even mention metastasis. In addition to these problems, the medical establishment is actively engaged in suppressing natural cures. Since the early 1900s, the AMA has protected pharmaceuticals, claiming any unpatentable natural solutions for treating cancer are unscientific, illegitimate, or quackery. However, as far as I can tell, the AMA's accusations are false, and there appear to be viable, effective, and natural cancer cures that just need to be further developed. Before I continue with examples of some of the people who came up with some technology or procedures that would, by their estimation, cure cancer, I just wanted to highlight that. That kind of recaps everything that you were saying and also what was addressed within the clip that we started the show off with, mainly that they're not interested in curing anyone. They're not focusing on a cure. They're just focusing on the next drug that's going to alleviate a certain set of symptoms. Of course, as they do that, the list of side effect symptoms gets longer and longer and longer. We've all seen those commercials where, at the end, they're giving the side effects, and it's almost as long as the commercial itself,
And worse.
So that should tell us.
Out, brother. Well, check this out, Brother Rio. I don't even believe that they're trying to alleviate. Like, for instance, they say, well, it'll alleviate this, but you'll have these side effects. I'm not sure they're even trying to alleviate anything. I'm looking at it from a standpoint of population control, and also a way to dump their waste onto the people. You have, waste out there. You have them wanting to cull the planet of the certain population. You see they want to reduce numbers of people across the board. I just believe that they're just using their pharmaceutical industry and the health industry as a way to dump all their toxins into people, and those who are in certain economic status, poverty, black, are just going to be the victims of it. That's the way I see it.
Hopefully, I would agree with that. I would agree with that, brother. Because we know that I'm of the opinion that is one way that they monitor the transition of human beings over an extended period of time. They introduce something and then they monitor how it affects people on a generational level. And they try to adjust according to whatever their plans are. They try to adjust it, probably for their own benefit, but definitely to, our own detriment. So, I think it's twofold. I think, it is for population control because they definitely have to keep us, our numbers down, which we're going to introduce a little bit more information about that later on in the show. But, also to study us, to see how we react to different combinations of particular drugs, see how it can benefit them, either extend their own life or increase the quality of their own life. And an example of that would be, I would say sunscreens and, the new medications that are coming out that, are beneficial to the Tamiflu's. We know that they've been working on some type of synthetic melanin for the longest time. And they're always coming out with new and improved variations of that. But what are they studying to update and to improve these synthetic melanin products? How are you going to do that when, you're not privy to a mass amount of melanin in your own community? You have to go to the source.
But they don't have to be privy to it in their community because they're privy to it through ours.
That's my point. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That is exactly the point. But it's not like they're coming with open hands and bearing the truth. Hey, we're trying to understand you so we can better our own position, because the sun is out here tearing us up.
Hey, Brother Real, let me kick this at you because, now listen, this is a conversation me and my dad was having earlier today. And we've had it many times before, and like he keeps saying to me, look here, bruh, if you go back to certain times in African history and the culture of black people in this country, you're not hollering cancer with black people. Black people aren't being diagnosed with cancer. And they're not being diagnosed with a lot of this thing that we're being diagnosed with. And you can take us back through slavery when we were eating the worst types of food that you can possibly imagine, the slop. And we still were not being diagnosed with these level of disease. So that would have to make black folk in general say, hold on. They have to be literally giving us or putting it in so many different aspects of our lives for us to now be disproportionately affected when it comes to these diseases. When you're looking at heart disease, cancer, all kind of illnesses, black people are suffering from them at the highest rate. So, I mean, if this isn't a conspiracy, or because I know a lot of people hate the word conspiracy as if it doesn't exist in the dictionary. If this isn't a conspiracy, I don't know what is, because how can you all of a sudden go from eating slop, pretty much the garbage off of the Europeans' table, to where now you're in a society where you can go out and eat whatever you choose, but now you have the worst health conditions that you've had since you've been under this oppression. So it's definitely speaking to them turning the page in the process in which they're bringing death to African people.
Well, brother, instead of saying it's a conspiracy, I will say something that we can all agree on the definition, and, we're being subject to genocide. And
Sir,
as you said, if we look back in the past, even from the times of slavery, when we were, as you said, we were eating the worst of the worst, and we still didn't have as many health issues as we're having now. Well, what's different? the difference is our determination. Back then, we had no choice but to rally around each other and determine our own courses. So, we planted our own food, and we had doctors within our own community who knew us and understood us. They knew what we were eating. They knew what we were doing on a daily basis, how hard we were working, and the things that we were encountering. We were tight-knit, and we had no choice but to band together if we were going to survive under those conditions.
And Brother Rio, yes. Let me kick this. And I'm not saying that the food and the slop that we got back in those days was good for us, because that food caused all kind of problems with us back then as well, in terms of it wasn't nutritious, so we were malnutrition. We had all kind of other issues as well because of the food that we were eating, but we didn't have the diseases that we are now be afflicted by now, and at the rate we are being afflicted by them. Can I read something to you real fast? Let me kick this at you, Brother Rio.
Let me address that comment, though, real quick, though.
Yes, sir.
In the same breath, we also had people who were still in touch with our roots, so they knew how to counteract a lot of that bull that we were eating, and we could supplement that with herbs from the earth. So, the food that we were being offered as slaves from, the people who were oppressing us, was it that great? No, it wasn't that great. But we could identify in nature things that would be beneficial for us, that would cleanse us of those toxins. And we also, we had a different lifestyle back then. We were forced to work, but, we spent most of the time in the sun, and we were physically active, of course, to the point of exhaustion. But still, that is a healthier way of being than what we are experiencing today, because of the lack of exercise, the lack of sun exposure. As you often tell me, we are we are the new cavemen, because we run from the house to the car to our place of business.
Air-conditioned house. Air-conditioned car.
Back into the car, with the air conditioning, because we don't want to sweat or get too hot. We're wearing, dark shades, to block the sun rays from getting, absorbed into our eyes and our retinas and things of that nature. We wear big hats, and, you have a lot of melanated people wearing sunscreen, which is further blocking the sun's rays, depriving their body from manufacturing vitamin D from a natural source. Which but a lot of people, Brother Rio, don't understand the importance of getting vitamin D directly from the sun. They don't understand it. They basically just another classic example of miseducation. But let me show you how deplorable black folks' health condition is presently at this time in this country. Medical experts of every persuasion agree that African Americans share the most deplorable health profile in the nation by far, one that resembles that of a third world countries. When Dr. Harold Friedman observed that the health status of Harlem men resembles that of Bangladesh more closely than that of their Manhattan neighbors, and he did not exaggerate. Twice as many African American babies as babies of other ethnic groups die before their first birthday. 1.5 times as many African American adults as white adults die every year. Blacks have dramatically higher rates of nearly every cancer, of AIDS, of heart disease, of diabetes, of liver disease, of infectious diseases, and they even suffer from higher rates of accidental death, homicide, and mental illness. Before they die young in droves from imminently preventable diseases, African Americans also suffer far more devastating but equally preventable disease complications, such as blindness, confinement to wheelchairs, and limb loss. Studies continue to demonstrate that, far from sharing in the bounty of American medical technology, African Americans are often bereft of high technology care, even for life-threatening conditions such as heart disease. They dogging us, Brother Rio. We get dogged. We are being dragged across basically just being drugged like animals. And
I think it basically is because of our consciousness. When you have an oppressor that can look at the individuals he is oppressing, and then he can see in their mindsets, their actions, and their behavior that they still haven't caught on, to catch themselves and to be able to stand up and say, okay, we need to now start doing things to protect ourselves from this particular oppressor. He is recognizing that we still are not at that point, and he is dumping the toxins, and he is dumping everything he can to continue the death rate of African people. This is going to continue to happen until we wake up. Either we wake up or we'll be just like the Tasmanians, where to be one picture of a brother that was the last brother from America be on the front of a book.
Well, I'm going to take it a step further, Brother Tommy, because this makes it very evident that it's part of the plan, because once you have the people in the position exhibiting the symptoms that you just read about, how are those people going to rise up against you when you have the very medicine that is poisoning, but mentally they feel is the only option they have to continue their existence? What real motivation is there for them to band together and fight against an otherwise oppressive system? You got any thoughts on that, brother?
No, that's heavy. I agree. It basically puts you in a position to where unless there's unity on a mass scale, there's nothing you can do. Basically, you having people that are living and dying under oppression, born under oppression, not really understanding the level of the oppression until you become an adult. And most people don't even understand it then. And then once you do understand the level of oppression, once you become adult, next you know, all the horrible things that they've put in front of you have accumulated, and now you checking out of here, living and dying under oppression. And the only way it's going to stop is unless we stop it.
And like you said before, you're limiting yourself to thinking that this is the only chance I got. There is no other option. And one of the reasons that the majority of our people are thinking like that is because of the natural cures that have been suppressed. For example, there was a doctor by the name of Royal Raymond Rice, or Riff, and this is in the 1930s. He was a brilliant, bacteriologist and former student of Johns Hopkins University. He developed a machine that could neutralize disease-causing microorganisms, including cancer cells, with the use of frequencies. In 1934, at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, Southern California, Riff conducted clinical trials on 16 terminally ill cancer patients and successfully cured all of them. A team of medical specialists, including Dr. Milbank Johnson, chairman of the Special Medical Research Committee of USC, George Fisher of the NY Children's Hospital, and Dr. Waylon Morrison, the chief medical officer of the Santa Fe Railway, confirmed the findings. Through the efforts of Morris Fishbin, head of the Journal of the American Medical Association, the AMA, Riff was essentially shut down and ruined, and his brilliant and promising work has all been but forgotten. Another person by the name of Harry Hoxsey. Harry Hoxsey popularized the cancer cure that his father, a veterinarian, had successfully developed. The Hoxsey treatment is herbal and consists of both a topical paste and an internal tonic. Hoxsey made believers out of skeptics by curing dozens of patients in 1936. He established the largest independent clinic in the country in Dallas, Texas. Again, the Journal of American Medical Association attacked him vigorously. Hoxsey sued the journalist who attempted to expose him as a fraud, and he won, just like Dr. Sebi won. So the truth is out there, and there are cures to these ailments, these dis-ease. I don't want to call them diseases, because what they really are is dis-ease, all we have to do is turn away from these medical bandits that really seek to do us no good. Now, in the same breath, don't get me wrong, I will give credit for one particular endeavor that they have pretty much mastered, and that is putting back together a mangled body. You know, if you're in a car accident and you got, you know, organs hanging out all over the place, you know, they roll you into the emergency room, they can stitch you back up, and they can get you, you know, to a pretty decent condition until you can get to a place where you're healing on your own.
But they're not going to stitch the black person back up to get healing on their own. They want those organs, you know what I'm saying, on a whole nother level. So there's a very good chance that they're going to let you expire. But party people, we're about to go to a break. And Brother Rio, we're going to hit it real hard on the other side. The number is 866. The number is 866-510-9025. If you have a question, please call in. We definitely want to hear what you got to say. But Melanated Roots Radio Show on the Black Talk Radio Network will be back after the next break.
For podcasts and live program scheduling, visit us on the web at blacktalkradionetwork.com.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome back, everyone, to the Melanated Roots Radio Show, brought to you by the Black Talk Radio Network. We are dealing with the topic of genocide, destruction of melanated people through toxins and medical science. On the phone with my brother Rio, bringing some information back and forth. So, again, 866-510-9025. If you have any questions or comments, we would definitely like to hear from you and to bring different aspects of the topic into the conversation. Right now, Brother Scotty, you said that you had a statement that you would like to make. Go ahead and bring it to us, bro.
Yeah, I have a question and an observation. So my first question to either of you brothers is, have y'all seen any studies pertaining to non-white people, specifically black people, and the ailments that y'all have been talking about in life expectancy, comparing urban blacks to rural blacks? Have y'all seen any type of study looking at that?
I can. For me, I have not, but I didn't necessarily go into the research looking for that either. I'm assuming that, especially when you look at the rate at which black folks are in urban areas as opposed to being on land that was passed down through family, I did not find that or see that. But it seems to me like that would be hard to find because I'm not sure there's a decent population of black folks who's able to do what you've been able to do, Scotty, and hold on to land from our people. What you think, Rio?
Brother Scotty, I have not ran across any studies that specifically have those as the goal of comparing specifically urban people in one area to the rural people in one area as far as blacks go. But on a more general and a global basis, what I have seen is that melanated people in rural or tribal or secluded areas are living longer than the people who are in the urban cities because they have a better diet. They tend to be more physical. They tend to get out in nature more and they're not subject to as many toxins as the people who are living in urban sprawled out areas, unless you're dealing with a situation to where those rural people are coming up against corporations that are seeking to overtake their land and their resources. Then all of a sudden you have, I believe, Brother Tommy touched on this in the beginning of they're popping up with illnesses, only to find out generations later that there was a radioactive site that was dumped in the area that nobody knew about, or a trash with industrial waste that was poisoning the ground or the water supplies,
right.
That nobody knew of,
Right.
or what's going on in Michigan. We're finding lead in the water, and the lead is in predominantly black urban areas, but again, it's targeted in the black communities to affect the black population. So those are the research studies that I'm finding. I don't know if that answers your question effectively enough, but that's come across.
I mean, you answered it in saying you haven't seen any of the studies, but what you have seen kind of leads me to believe that environment plays a big role in that, especially in the United States, in these urban areas that were industrial centers and pouring all kind of pollution and stuff, that poisons the soil, the air. So a lot of environmental factors. Now, the observation I have, like you alluded to, I do live in a rural area, probably, and I'm not exaggerating, one of the oldest, quote unquote, black communities in the United States that has been consistent, since I've been alive. I've seen we're going into 5 generations now, with my grandsons. Well, actually, we're going into 6 generations. So, since I've been alive. Now, since it is, how it is in a small rural area around towns or communities, is that everybody pretty much know everybody. And so the people around here have been living to their 70s, up in their 80s. I don't recall anybody ever making it to their 90s, unless it was before I was born. But the people that have, let's say, for example, I went to school with, the ones who have passed on, who are no longer with us, had drinking habits, hard liquor, cheap wine, Mad Dog 2020, or they were using hard drugs. And those are the individuals who don't make it to 50. So that's my observation.
I would say you're absolutely correct, Brother Scotty, as well as the now recognized plots and even admitted, to a certain point, of flooding of hardcore drugs into the black community, because they understood that the harmful effect that these drugs would have, also, the pacifying effect that these drugs would have. And, most people don't understand that, we're dealing with people who have, they truly do study us. They study us to the point of where, they know more about us than we know about ourselves, because we have been disconnected, but also just because, they have, there's a Dr. Jewel Pookrum that people can Google or, find some YouTube clips on her. She was in she is a doctor by license, so she's been through the school and she has all the degrees, but she was able to keep her consciousness about her. And she was privy to a lot of information, and she discovered that, every 4 years they have a global conference about melanin, and not one person of melanated color is invited. So they're studying us. They're doing studies about us all over the globe, and they come together every 4 years to discuss their findings, and then they print these findings in but they make these books inaccessible to the public, mainly the black community, and they charge an excessive fee for these books. So we're talking about a single book costing around $500 or $600, which we know most people in our community are not going to pay that much for a book. But, she was in a position to purchase these books, and so she bought them, and she looked at them, and she was disseminating, the information that was within these books. But they understand melanin and how it is a double-edged sword, the benefits of it as well as the detriments of it. So the same thing that makes us great can also be our greatest weakness. You got anything to say, Brother Tommy?
Yeah, I feel what you're saying, but I wanted to make a quick comment. Brother Scotty mentioned on, the people didn't hear, but Brother Scotty had mentioned on our board how Dr. Sebi used to talk about the great benefits of cannabis. And what I wanted to explain to the people is that there has been an assault on cannabis and its healing properties purposely, because what they did was they know that the cannabis plant has two different attributes to it. It has hemp, and then you also have a portion where it has its THC and that of that nature. So what they did was took hemp and connected it to the marijuana aspect of getting high, so people could have a negative image of it to make it seem like marijuana or the THC properties and the hemp properties are the same. And what really that can be done, there's a lot, if you take the hemp out of the cannabis plant, it has great medicinal properties, but they connected it with marijuana, so to speak, and they're suppressing hemp and the great medical healing that it can do. So I didn't want to go too far into that, but I just wanted to at least speak on that, Brother Scotty. I seen your little comment right there. But, yeah, they're discrediting hemp with THC, even though hemp doesn't even have maybe 2% of THC in it to where it can't even give you a buzz. But all the other health benefits of the hemp, they won't let it move forward because they have a plot to discredit hemp by tying it into so-called marijuana. Okay, Brother Rio, go ahead. You got something to say to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to add on and kind of, just for a point of clarity, they are cannabis and the hemp are cousins, but they are all, under the same umbrella of cannabis. So we're talking about two different plants. Cannabis has more THC than hemp does. And cannabis is the scientific term for that family, but they termed it marijuana so that they could have control over it. So when it's referred to as marijuana, it's an illegal substance. Legally, Absolutely. It's an illegal substance. But as cannabis, which is a scientific term, it's an herb. It's classified as an herb, which is not illegal under the judicial system. So they found a way to monetize and make cannabis illegal. Again, one, because our people were heavy into it because we recognize it as being useful in healing the body, and two, for control of economics, because hemp can be used in various products to build houses, to even build cars. You're seeing, other countries, they're using hemp to build cars as well as furniture. And in a nutshell, hemp can be a whole industry, from furniture to houses to cars to supplements to food, because it contains a lot of vitamins and minerals and things of that nature. So they had to find a way to control. It boils back down to economics and control. They had to control that industry so that what they were doing, people were relying upon it, and they can continue to make money instead of being challenged and having other people, self-determine how they want to live their lives. So I just wanted to add that, brother.
Yeah, no, let me piggyback on what you just said. I think this little statement will clear it up because you just made a real clear distinction for me because, like it says here, it is in the same genus or species as marijuana, hemp is. However, it would be like comparing two types of apples and assuming they both contain the same sugar content, when in fact some apples are very tart and not meant for individual consumption at all. So I feel what you're saying. They're so the same genus, but they're tying hemp to marijuana. You feel me? So, and not only that, they have made hemp a Schedule I substance in the same fashion, even though they know that it only has 3% THC, when marijuana has anywhere from 3 to 20% THC. So they're making sure that
distinction
go ahead.
Between, scientifically, they're making a distinction between cannabis, or what's known as marijuana, and hemp. You know, that's why they have two different names. But legally, they're clumping them together for control, because they don't want the industry of hemp to overtake the industries they already have in place, making certain families money. They don't want the competition. Unless now you're seeing, you know, they're starting these little pharmacies, and they're granting licenses to people they deem worthy. And these people are going to have to do what they say if they want to continue to grow, you know, medical marijuana. But, you know, they're setting the stage to introduce hemp and have it under their control so they can continue to make the money.
Yes, sir. Okay, Brother Rio, now what I would like to do, my brother, is turn our attention to toxins, lead, and other toxins that are going into the black community, toxins from waste dump sites, landfills, incinerators. I think there's a lot of information about where they're strategically placing waste material and how they are allowing toxins to come into black communities from this material. So I want to set the stage a little bit, Brother Rio, for this discussion, and then so that we can clearly understand that it is being done based upon race, and black people specifically are being targeted. Yeah, we know there's dump sites everywhere. We know there's fracking. We know there's a lot of toxins in the air, but they are being specifically geared towards black communities, or black and Latino communities, but more specifically black. So let me set the stage on this, brother. When it comes to hazardous waste facilities, or in these places where they're doing their dumping, here are the major findings that they have. So this report deals with the commercial hazardous waste facilities, uncontrolled toxic waste sites, okay? So the major finding is that race proved to be the most significant among variables tested in association with the location of commercial hazardous waste facilities. So they know by test that race is the number one factor where they are deciding to put hazardous waste facilities. Period. So, we know everybody is being affected, but race is the number one thing. Also, communities with the greatest number of commercial hazardous waste facilities had the highest composition of racial and ethnic residents. In communities with 2 or more facilities, or one of the nation's 5 largest landfills, the average minority percentage of the population was more than 3 times that of communities without facilities. In addition, in communities with 1 commercial hazardous waste facility, the average minority percentage of the population was twice the average minority percentage of the population in communities without such facilities. Last one. Although socioeconomic status appeared to play an important role in the locations of commercial hazardous waste facilities, race still proved to be more significant. This remained true after the study controlled for urbanization and regional differences. Incomes and home values were substantially lower when the communities with commercial facilities were compared to communities in the surrounding counties without facilities. So even when we're dealing with poor white folks, they are not having these facilities placed in their communities. They are still being placed where black folks live. So race is the most significant factor. Hold on, Rio, I'm not done yet. Let me finish.
Go ahead, bro.
Poor black and okay. Poor black and brown people throughout this nation are bearing more than their fair share of the poisonous fruits of industrial production. They live cheek by jowl with waste dumps, incinerators, landfills, smelters, factories, chemical plants, and oil refineries whose operations make them sick and kill them young. They are poisoned by the air they breathe, the water they drink, the fish they catch, the vegetables they grow, and in the case of children, the very ground they play on. Even the residents of some of the most remote, rural, minority hamlets of the South and Southwest suffer from the ill effects of toxins. So that would even answer Brother Scotty's question about rural and what's going on rurally. So even rural minorities are being adversely affected by toxins and chemicals coming into their community due to hazardous waste facilities. Okay, so it said the disproportionate location of sources of toxic pollution in poor minority enclaves are the result of various development patterns. In some cases, the residential communities where poor minorities now live were originally the homes of whites who worked in the facilities that generate toxic emissions. The housing and the industry sprang up roughly simultaneously. Whites vacated the housing, but not necessarily the jobs. They kept the jobs, but they moved away from where these places were for better shelter as their socioeconomic status improved. And poor black and brown folks who enjoy much less residential mobility took their place. In other cases, housing for blacks and Latinos was built in the vicinity of existing industrial operations because the land was cheap and the people were poor. So in some cases, Brother Rio, they are specifically putting houses for black folks next to these dumping grounds. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead, kick, man. It's just crazy. Go ahead, brother.
Well, one thing I want to highlight that you just read, I think that addresses your point, Brother Scotty. It is a universal law that a warning has to be given before anything can transpire. And, you know, how they choose to do this, whether it be movies or code or what have you, the people who have the ability to get out of the way, they do get out of the way, which are going to be your more affluent, Tammy Hughes. You know, they're going to exit the scene, whereas people of lower economic status aren't going to have that option, which we know are going to be predominantly melanated people. But of course, you know, collateral damage. Some people in the white community, the Tammy Hughes, are going to be affected and get caught up in the damage. But they really don't care. They're targeting blacks, but they really don't care about the lower class of Tammy Hughes who can't get out of the way. You know, they're going to be collateral damage. And again, the people who can get out, they do get out because they know the code, they recognize the signs, and they know when it's time to go. They know when it's time to move. So, them destroying their own, in their heads, they're not destroying their own. They're controlling a population of people who can become dangerous if they become educated and they unify and they understand what's really going on. And, you know, the people who aren't smart enough to understand the game, well, you know, that's their fault. Ignorance is no excuse for them. So I thought that was powerful. And you know, I just wanted to point out that I think that illustrates an answer to Brother Scotty's question in past shows quite nicely.
And also, Brother Rio, and now that when we used to look at white flight, when we used to look at certain neighborhoods and communities that were all white, sir. If you look at Stone Mountain over there, where, you know, now it's all black over there, but that was an all white area in Atlanta at one point in time. A lot of times we think blacks are, you know, white folks get to running and moving out because black folks are moving in, but a lot of times they're privy to these dump sites and waste sites and understand the toxicity that existed in the area as well. And that is one of the big reasons why, as blacks start coming in, that white folks is running out of there as well, because blacks who are buying these homes from these white folks give them an opportunity to get away from something that they're aware of that the blacks are not aware of.
Right. I feel you.
You feel me?
I feel you. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let me hit you with this, Brother Rio. It says, okay. The demographic characteristics of communities with uncontrolled toxic waste sites. Now, here's the demographic of those communities. 3 out of every 5 Black and Hispanic Americans live in communities with uncontrolled waste sites. 3 out of 5. More than 15 million Blacks live in communities with 1 or more uncontrolled toxic waste sites. More than 8 million Hispanics live in communities with 1 or more uncontrolled toxic waste sites. Blacks were heavily overrepresented in the populations of metropolitan areas with the largest number of uncontrolled toxic waste sites. Now, here are the areas. Memphis, Tennessee has 173 sites. St. Louis, Missouri has 160 sites. Houston, Texas has 152 toxic sites. Cleveland, Ohio has 106. Chicago, Illinois has 103. And Atlanta, Georgia has 94. And these are in communities where Black people live in large numbers, my brother.
I don't know if I know that you live further outside of the Atlanta area than I do, but I do know that when traveling around 285, particularly by the Jonesboro Road portion of 285, I don't notice it as much today, but you know there is a dump. And it smells to high heaven, and it doesn't smell like trash. It smells like something really toxic. And, you know, you get a whiff of that every now and then, but, you know, that really brings home, you know, exactly what you're reading, because, you know, I experienced that, you know, and it makes me want to move out even further.
Yeah, it is obvious that they definitely are putting this toxic waste into your community. And if we look at just the issue that happened up in Flint, and what they did with the Flint River in terms of all those toxins from those plants that they allowed to go into the water. Now this is why what even makes it worse, and how they are definitely targeting the death of Black people, because let me show you how lead, just a little bit of lead, affects people. The amount of lead dust that covers a thumbnail, Brother Rio, is enough to send a child into a coma or into convulsions, which will lead to his death. Just a thumbnail amount of lead. It takes less than a tenth of that amount to cause IQ loss, hearing loss, or behavioral problems like attention deficit disorder or dyslexia. 1/10 of a thumbnail, and yet you have populations where you have this lead going into these Black communities across the country, and just small, minute amounts of this toxic chemical can cause those types of problems. And look how long that they've been allowing these toxins to come into our communities. I was reading, Brother Rio, about a study that happened 80 years ago in St. Louis when Europeans were spraying zinc cadmium sulfide, that's what it was called, which was something that had radioactive particles in it. And
was that in Cabrini Green?
No, sir, brother. That was in St. Louis. It was in a project called Pruitt Ego, which was a public it was a public housing complex that there were about 10,000 to 15,000 African American residents living there, and they were spraying this community with a toxin, radioactive toxin, and they did it for years. You feel me? And so now we're dealing with toxins galore coming into Black communities. more specifically, schools that young black kids are going to are full of lead and full of toxins. Go ahead, brother.
I was just wondering, did that come out of medical apartheid?
No. That was just on some independent research that I did.
Okay, because in the medical apartheid, which was a book written by Harriet Washington, I believe she has a chapter on radiation experimentation on the African American community. But I didn't have a chance to read over that, so I was wondering if that's where that came from, or the family can kind of look that up and get some in-depth information, and kind of fact check different sources for that. But I didn't mean to interrupt,
No, you're fine. What they can do, Brother Rio, is they can type in St. Louis sprayed with radioactive particles, and then they can read the article themselves. So black folks are definitely being targeted. Check this out, Rio. What it says here is, after reviewing the literature on hazardous waste incineration, one commentator has concluded that minority communities represent a least cost option for waste incinerators because much of the waste to be incinerated is already in these communities. Wow. The waste is already there, brother.
Wow.
Polluters know that the community is comprised of low-income and working-class people with no more than a high school education or not as effective at marshaling opposition as communities of middle or upper-income people. So they are taking advantage of the fact that they are making sure that we are undereducated and we are in a position of no strength to where we don't even have the ability to muster up the strength to start a pushback to the toxins that are coming into our community.
Brother Tommy, at this time, I want to go ahead and interject, I think, a point that is very valid. Also, one of the things that they're doing is that along with these dumps, the factories of these corporations are also taking their toxins and they are putting it in products that we consume on a daily basis, such as fluoride. Now, fluoride is a substance that naturally occurs in nature. So, it is found in small amounts around, streams and rivers and things of that nature, and it is good for mineral hardening of your bones and your teeth. But, that's a natural source, and it's in balance with a lot of other minerals and vitamins. But what the corporations and the factories have done is they have waste products that they have, quote-unquote, named fluoride, and they describe the benefits of natural fluoride, but in the products, they're putting in these chemical byproducts that they've labeled as fluoride, which do not have the same effects. They are carcinogenic, they are toxic, and they lead to a whole host of issues within the human body. But, these are some of the tricks that, corporations and industry, FDA and other ABC alphabet corporations or organizations within the federal government play on the American people. And if you don't take the time to study and research these things, you're going to get tricked and you're going to get fooled every time.
Every time.
Brother Rio.
Oh, yeah.
Brother Rio.
Yes, sir.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can. I'm sorry, caller. Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother. 719. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, this excuse me. This is Ramon. What's up, Scotty? Good greetings to you, gentlemen, this evening.
Greetings, sir.
When you started reading that data, I guess it's a research. I never really thought about it myself, but it seems like the focus when they say dump sites, the focus is really on waste, meaning a liquid material. Is that what I think I'm getting?
Mostly, and all kinds of waste. Yes. Not garbage.
And also, you know,
so
these
solid materials as well.
Even if it is garbage, these toxins or in whatever form, you know, that they choose to dump it in is subject to the elements. So, you know, you have rainwater that's going to deteriorate and it's going to leach, and, you know, it's going to get into the groundwater as well as the surrounding earth around it and just spread. So at some point it's going to become liquid.
Okay, so here's something I was thinking of too. It appears to me in that discussion about waste and, you know, the areas that are affected the most, one particularly a subject when I'm hearing how y'all speak about it, a subject that has been muted and omitted from that discussion is electrical lines, power lines.
Yes, sir.
So that's the reason why I was asking, what's the specific? Are they specific about one area, or are they saying that's the only total problem?
Yeah. No. That was just, we were just speaking of specifically waste sites, incinerators, landfills, things of that nature that they're putting specifically in black communities.
So to me, an electrical distribution center should be put right in that category then.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. And the Planned Parenthood around the corner.
Right, but, you know, speaking to your point in particular, you know, we have documented evidence that, you know, these landfills and all these waste dump sites and all these things were particularly targeted and put into the black community. You know, information is just now coming out because the technology is still, you know, for all intents and purposes fairly recent as to the effects of these electromagnetic fields that are being generated from all these cell towers and all these power lines. You know, more information is coming out more about the power lines, of course, you know, which are more targeted as well in the black community, you know, as well as.
Here's something I would add to that, if you don't mind me saying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to try to, before it got off my mind there, that here's something you could probably start looking at geographically. Look at where these neighborhoods that you said the data research is on, particularly where I live. I wouldn't even say where I live is there's no projects, I'll put it that way, and what so-called ghetto we have here, I don't think most people would call that a ghetto. So I would say this, something I noticed where there is predominantly black folk here in my city, or, you know, a diverse group where the military bases surround the, you know, predominant area. Something I noticed, all the heavy power lines and distribution centers, let's say the highway runs north and south. So that means you got your east and west sides of your communities. All the communities, except the ones directly by the Army base here in town called Fort Carson, where all the money is, there are no power lines that run directly within their area. They're all ran either east, where the common people ourselves, all the power lines, only, you know, other than what they take into the neighborhood, and then once it gets into the neighborhood, they bury it. So that's something I started noticing myself. All the major distribution centers are focused or are built within the, you know, like I said, it's not a poor area, but where the money is, you don't see heavy distribution centers. And once they begin to go into the community, they dive them into the ground. So I thought I'd just put that out there as an observation. Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate it, Brother Ramon. Appreciate your call. We got another caller on the line, area code 408. Please tell us your name and give us your comment. Hello, area code 408. Okay, you're just listening then. Okay, Brother Rio, go ahead. You got anything you want to say?
Nah, brother. If you want to continue on with your point,
yes, sir.
You could do that, or you know, whenever you're ready, let me know, because you know, I'm ready to switch gears a little bit.
Okay, well, hold on. Also, I wanted to speak out. Here's an example of how they get toxins into our community and the problems that they start creating in our community. In West Harlem was supposed to receive what they considered as a trade-off for accepting New York City's largest sewage treatment plant, and an elaborate state park to be built on the roof of a facility. So the New York was telling Harlem, West, where these blacks are, hey, you guys take this the sewage treatment plant that we're going to put together, and we will give you benefits become of it. But the plant is functioning and is fouling up the air with the emissions of hydrogen sulfide and promoting an infestation of rats and mosquitoes right there in the black neighborhood. So they're making sure that when they are creating waste, they're making sure it's directly going to black neighborhoods and communities. And also, one of the most blatant instances of this involves the operation of 3 lead smelters in the predominantly black and Latino West Dallas and East Oak Cliff sections of Dallas. In 1972, Dallas officials were given test results that indicated that black children living in the vicinity of those smelters had high levels of lead in their blood. So, and I just read to you what lead does to the individual. So go ahead, Brother Rio. I'm just astonished by these types of numbers. It's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. And let me hit you with one more thing because I know you're about to kick with something. Pollution, poverty, and worker insecurity reflect 3 different ways that American corporations express themselves as they exploit people and resources for maximum profits. When corporations need raw materials, they strip them from public lands as cheaply as possible and leave behind great scars on the earth. When they need labor, they hire workers as cheaply as possible and leave behind women and men broken by industrial injuries, disease, and debt. When corporations produce their goods, they use the cheapest and fastest methods available and leave behind vast quantities of waste. The corporations dump the waste in the poorest and most powerless parts of town, and when they earn their profits, the corporations divide them up among companies, executives, and investors, leaving behind poor people who cannot afford medical care or food or decent homes. They basically doing a number on us, Brother Rio. They doing a number on us, but in my opinion, this is the result of a people who will not wake up. You are seeing actions or deeds by these Europeans on a day-to-day basis on many different issues, but black folks are still being manipulated by their creed, by their words, by their talking. They're able to talk and say these things in a suit with their hair cut and their beard shaved and given a professional appearance, and they're able to say things to convince black folks when black folk are able to see that their actions are not lining up with their deeds. And if we can see that, okay, black folk, we ain't picking up on what these cats are doing. We're seeing it, but we ain't acting to it, responding to it. That means they can see it as well. So they see the powerlessness. They see the lack of unity. They see the confused minds and the willingness to follow these cats pretty much off a cliff. So until we are able to stand up and wake up and recognize what's going on and understand that this cat means no good for us, man, these type of things are just going to continue to happen.
Brother, that is an excellent point, and it is an excellent segue into the information that I'm about to give the family. Now, bear with me because it may seem like it doesn't connect, but by the end, I guarantee you'll be crystal clear. Now, I want to go back in history and kind of qualify some of the atrocities that we're seeing today. How it is linked to directly to things that have happened in the past, but we may not make the connection because it's just not spelled out 100%. I'm gonna start by talking about the Nazis and Hitler, and this is an article called "Why Did Hitler Call American Negroes the Real Jews?" Now, I want to quantify that because it starts off by saying, of course, there are well-respected sources that believe the American Negro is the Jew. And in order to understand that statement, you have to understand that the people who are calling themselves Jews today are not the true Jews or not the original Jews. They're what you call an Ashkenazi Jew, which was a sect of Tammuz in Europe who were in the middle of a war between Christians and also the Muslims. And they didn't want to get pulled into that war and have to side with either one of those because they had no idea who was going to win. So what they did was they studied both of their religions, and they found out that both of them adhere to the Old Testament, which was, mainly talking about the Jews. So what they did was they converted to Judaism, and followed the laws of the Old Testament to where it would satisfy both religions' requirements, and they could remain neutral. But these people eventually just took on the term Jews. The original Jews we should know were originally black. So the American Negro is of that bloodline, as we all are, just like we can call ourselves all Moors. We can all call ourselves Hebrews as well because it's the same bloodline. Just like we can call ourselves Mandingos. We can call ourselves Tanzanians or, because it's all referring to one bloodline or people that come from one source. So keep in mind religions that are being referred to in the article. And I know you're going to clean some things up, brother, after you hear it. So I ain't even really going to worry about it. But
hit me with it.
So, do you really believe that the Jews who lived in sunny Israel or ancient Egypt in Africa thousands of years ago was really a very small group of white people? Well, scientifically, that wouldn't make a lot of sense considering that they were slaves in Egypt who had to work all day in the literally blistering sun with no sunscreen. How long do you think that ingenious plan would last? Your workers would be dead within 24 to 48 hours. This argument alone could kill the thought that the ancient Hebrews was a small group of white people. That's just like how we are taught that Jesus was white, but when we read the Bible, look at the timing and the climate, it doesn't make sense. Oh, not to mention the ancient Roman pictures of black Jesus amongst other black Jews, but not a single white person. But of course, that doesn't matter either. Hitler said even in his death, he will start World War III. One of his soldiers asked how. Hitler replied, the day mankind finds out what I was trying to defend this nation, Germany, from, then that's the day World War III will start. For on that day, mankind will learn that I was trying to save my nation from the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and the Jews. For if the Americans wins the war, then they will conquer the world and forever be a slave to the Jews, and they will try to conquer God. Do you know who America has in its possession? No, the soldier replied. The Americans have the jewels of God. The Americans have stolen God's precious jewels. What do you mean, his precious jewels? The soldier asked. Hitler said, America has stolen the Jews of God, his jewelry, the Negroes. They are the true Hebrews. What a foolish move and a direct challenge to God. And they plan on moving these false white Jews into a state of Israel. America is desperate in its attempt to win this war using atom bombs on Japan. America will destroy the whole world in its attempt to conquer it. When America and its Jewish slave masters conquer the world and the world realize I was right, then all nations will begin a third world war to dethrone America of its rule. Every nation will soon pass atom bombs of their own. It will be the end of most of the world as we know it. So, speaking to whether those comments are correct or not, it's still speaking to the identity of the Jews. and making a distinction between the Ashkenazi Jews and the original Jews. Now, Hitler went on a rampage, and he was expelling the Jews from Germany. But what most people don't know is that, most of the dark-skinned people were being kicked out, experimented on, and killed. And the Ashkenazi Jews that suffered and are, popularized through the Holocaust that they won't let anybody forget, they were persecuted because they made a voluntary decision to assume the identity of another people who were being ousted from the country, so that Germany and their ideal of eugenics and the Aryan race, which the model would be, someone in the Swedish or the Danish area with blonde hair and blue eyes would reign supreme. And those are the genetics they wanted to bring forth and populate the area of Germany. So because they wouldn't denounce or change their allegiance or come back for them to their proper status and stop claiming the false name and of other people, they were persecuted, and they paid a heavy price for that. But the eugenics program that the Nazis made popular was not, in fact, of their own creation. They, in fact, got it from America. And a person who made it popular and is a controversy today was her name was Margaret Sanger. And I have an article here where Ben Carson is making some comments about Margaret Sanger. It's entitled, "Did Margaret Sanger believe African Americans should be eliminated?" Despite being dead for 49 years, Margaret Sanger, founder of the organization that became Planned Parenthood, has a way of turning up in the news. Her latest appearance came during remarks by Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson at a retirement center in Exeter, New Hampshire. Answering a question at Riverwoods Retirement Community, Carson said that Planned Parenthood, as you know, was founded by Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist. She believed that people like me should be eliminated or kept under control. At a press conference later, he specified that he meant by people like me, he said he was talking about the black race. Claims like this have been examined by PolitiFact before. Back in March, New Hampshire, Republican William O'Brien claimed Sanger was an active participant in the Ku Klux Klan. That claim was rated false. And in 2011, businessman and GOP presidential candidate Herman Cain said Planned Parenthood's early mission was to help kill black babies before they came into the world. That statement was rated as pants on fire. Carson's statement pulls on the same thread. Sanger was indeed a believer in eugenics, but the basic concept that humanity could be improved by selective breeding was an article of faith for many. In the years before World War II, Winston Churchill, Herbert Hoover, Theodore Roosevelt, George Bernard Shaw, and H.G. Wells all supported the movement. African-American leader W.E.B. Du Bois backed many of his principles as well. At that time, W.E.B. Du Bois was the chairman or the head of the NAACP, which I don't know if a lot of people know was founded and also orchestrated by the Ashkenazi Jews. Although the eugenics movement included some who had racist ideas wanting to create some sort of master race, only a minority of eugenics ever believed this, according to Ruth Ames, professor at Indiana University. At the time that Sanger was active, the purpose of eugenics was to improve the human race by having people be more healthy through exercise, recreation in parks, marriage to someone free from sexually transmitted diseases, well baby clinics, immunization, clean food and water, proper nutrition, non-smoking, and drinking. It's a far cry to equate eugenics with advocating the elimination of black people. I can go on, but it's pretty much, pro Margaret Sanger and her intentions for eugenics and Planned Parenthood, which she was the founder and ran. But I came across a letter that Margaret Sanger wrote to a Dr. C.J. Gamble herself.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I just wanted to read a portion of it, and I'm gonna let the family make their own decision.
Okay.
Let's see. Miss Rose sent me a copy of your letter of December 5th, and I note that you doubt it worthwhile to employ a full-time Negro physician. It seems to me, from my experience, where I have been in North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Texas, that while the colored Negroes have great respect for white doctors, they can get closer to their own members and more or less lay their cards on the table, which means their ignorance, superstitions, and doubts. They do not do this with the white people, and if we can train the Negro doctor at the clinic, he can go among them with enthusiasm and with knowledge, which I believe will have far-reaching results among the colored people. His work, in my opinion, should be entirely with the Negro profession and the nurse, hospitals, social workers, as well as the county's white doctors. His success will depend upon his personality and his training by us. The minister's work is also important, and also he could be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members. I agree with you that Miss. Yeah, I'm gonna stop right there because that pretty much says it all. I'll let the family. You can look up Margaret Sanger. You can Google Margaret Sanger and the letter to Dr. C.J. Gamble, Gamble, on December 10th, 1939, and you can read the letter in its entirety, and you can come up with your own conclusions. But it's clear to me that people are trying to spin Margaret Sanger's contribution to eugenics and purify her intent. Because to me, that expert that I just ran, that sounds like a calculated plan that they actually put into action. So what are your thoughts on that, brother?
I agree. I mean, it's definitely a concentrated plan. She definitely wanted to kill little black babies. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. I mean, they can try to clean her up if they want to, but those who are willing to do the research, the information is out there all day, exactly where she stood and what organizations that she was a part of that felt the exact same way, and the other so-called colleagues of hers that felt the same way as well. Okay, Brother Rio, we're getting ready to go ahead and wrap the show up, but I got one more thing I would like to share with the people before we get on out of here to put a final stamp on toxins and how they are making sure that we are being inundated with toxins and basically putting us in a situation where we can do nothing about it. This is the last thing I want to read. It says the lifestyles of poor minority people may affect their ability to link their health problems to toxin exposure and may also provide a defense to their claims. Many of them consume diets consisting mainly of junk food, soul food, or processed food, all of which are cheap but high in fat, salt, and sugar. Minorities' consumption of cigarettes, alcohol beverage, and illicit drugs tends either to be greater than that of the white population or to have more serious health consequences. In addition to the black folks who, in the good black people in the neighborhoods and communities who recognize that they are being inundated with these toxins, this is what they did to make sure that you don't change it. There are few communities that are fighting against the siting of certain industrial waste plants and landfills and everything. But the court made it to where they won't be able to stop it, because the court concluded that the plaintiffs must now show not just that the decision to grant a permit for a waste site is objectionable or even wrong, but that it is attributable to an intent to discriminate on the basis of race. So they're saying in order for us to even stop putting these foul things in your communities, you have to prove that we are intending to do it. You have to improve intent on our part, which is something that cannot be proven. So, right. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we have to wake up and understand what Europeans are doing. We have to wake up and understand that we have to raise up as a mighty people. The sleeping giant needs to be awakened. We need to go back to the way, the original way. We need to reestablish Ma'at, and we need to bring love for one another. We need to wake up and understand that if we don't wake up and start living by each other, for each other, in a nation-like state, we are going to be nothing but the victims of this European. Go ahead and take us out, Brother Will.
Well, I just want to reiterate everything that you were saying, because we are, disenfranchised politically, by plan and by design. And if we don't find a way to unify, then we're always going to suffer from that disadvantage if we choose to stay within the system. And I'm not saying or of the opinion that we should, but that's another show. But if we don't clean up our diet, if we don't take self-determination and, as you said, return to what our ancestors left for us, and, rediscover all these herbal medicines and the way of purifying our bodies, then there's no way we are going to be able to unify, because we are not going to be in our right mind. We are not going to be thinking on a level to be able to unify, because our bodies are being poisoned for control and economics. We didn't even get into the exploitation of, which is the outcome of being toxic and dying so young and having organs removed, which is, fueling the black market. And we have to understand that we are dealing with the same mentality of people from the medieval times when they started to rise to now. So we definitely going to have to have a part 2 about this topic, because it definitely goes deeper. And, whatever it's going to take for us to wake up, brother, we're going to have to keep bringing information to the people, and we're going to have to share the information with our loved ones and let it spread until we get to an understanding that, there is only one way for us, and that is to unify. And to do that, we are going to have to take our control back. We're going to have to determine our own path and how we are going to treat each other, which is, getting back to our melanated roots. That's all I have to say. I think it was a powerful show. You got any last comments?
We're out. See you next week.